What is up, guys? Top tier Yu-Gi-Oh here, and today I've got a going second pure Zodiac deck profile, which is pretty much Zeus Turbo, but this deck can blind second and realistically have a chance at winning, and because of that, I think it's definitely worth considering. So let's go ahead and get into the profile. Starting with the Zodiac monsters, we have one copy of Zodiac Rapier, 3 copies of Thoroughblade, 3 copies of Ram, 3 copies of Whiptail, and then finally 1 copy of Fire Formation Tinky. You guys know what these cards do. You summon it, you make Borbo, attack directly, Xyz, Zeus. And so all of these cards are 1 card Zeuses, 4 material Zeuses at that, and so they're all extremely powerful, which is why we play so many of them. You want to draw this in every single hand so that you'll have maybe 3 to 4 going second cards and then like 1 Zodiac card to get to your Zeus. And that usually is the setup for winning that game. The other thing I'll add is that with these 5, the Rat, Thoroughblades, and Tinky to search either Rat or Thoroughblade, they will all get monsters into your graveyard as well, which will allow you to Shaka-9 them back and do a little combos as well. And so that's something to keep in mind too. If you open too many Zodiac monsters, again, Thoroughblade can be a great way to get rid of these extra monsters and draw into some more disruption. And so I found a lot of success with this lineup. I think it's pretty standard, so let's keep it moving. For the going second cards, which is the bulk of this deck, we'll start with the hand traps, and for those, we've got 3 copies of Dimensional Shifter, 3 copies of Lancia, and then 3 copies of Droll and Lockbird. And so all 3 of these cards have something in common, being that they have lingering effects. They're not just 1-point disruptions like an Ash Blossom, an Imperm Veiler, or something like that. And so these all can be played usually before Griffin even hits the board, because a lot of decks are playing the Adventure Engine. And the problem that I have with a lot of the other hand traps right now is you're effectively just trading with the Griffin, because they're summoning Griffin before going into their plays, and then you're not really stopping their plays, you're just getting rid of their Griffin when they use it to negate your hand trap. But all of these can be used first and will still disrupt your opponent for the rest of the turn. And so a card like D-Shifter, it's like you can't stop this, it's just stopping your turn pretty much. And same thing with Lancia and Droll. And so I find that these are the most impactful hand traps that I can play, which is why I'm maxed out on all of them. And now to add to these, we also have 3 copies of Super Poly, 3 copies of Mystic Mine, 3 copies of Droplets, 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone, and then 3 copies of Evenly Matched. And so we have 24 going second cards. Again, making this deck very good at going second, makes it very easy to stop opponents, break their boards. This deck can do it all because we also have Zeus on top of all of this. And so it's pretty incredible. So we have Cyclone and Evenly Matched for pretty much banishing things. These are great against back row decks. If you happen to play against like Eldritch, we have the outs for those as well, but also these can be used against the monster heavy matchups as well. And so with Cyclone, for example, you can banish a Scythe. So if your opponent ends on DPE set Scythe, you just chain Cyclone to their DPE, target their Scythe, and it's gone. That also deals with the potential of a Dagda revival too. And so this deals with Scythe, it deals with Blackout, it deals with Chuche, it deals with so many different cards in this current format. And then Evenly Matched, again, is great because everyone's playing the Adventure Engine. And so when your opponent is ending with a token on board, if you activate Evenly Matched, tokens can't be banished face down. And so they have to banish every other card instead, leaving the token on the board. And so it easily deals with like adventure boards after you've baited out the other cards on the field. So Evenly is great for that. We have both Mine and Droplets for just negating entire boards. Mine can also be a win condition if your opponent can't out it fast enough, because of course we've seen decks that like will play Mine and try to deck the opponent out and see if they draw into their own back row removal, which a lot of decks are not playing right now. But this deck can put you on an even faster clock, because you can like summon a Thoroughblade, put a Borbo on it, attack directly, and that puts your opponent on a 5-turn clock pretty much, because 16 direct every turn. And so Mine can be a win condition like that. Super Poly is incredible, but we'll talk about that later. Talk about all the different boards you can crack with just Super Poly pretty much. But these are what make this deck work. These 24 cards that allow us to go second. Now, another card that I was considering heavily was Forbidden Chalice. I was thinking about this over maybe the Mystic Mine or the Evenly, but I felt that both Mine and Evenly were just a little bit more impactful versus a card that's only going to be trading with 1 disruption. Mine or Evenly can trade with 1 disruption, but also if they resolve, they are breaking the entire board pretty much. whereas Chalice isn't quite as big. But I do like that Chalice is a quick effect or a quick play spell, so it can also be used against Scythe. It can also be used against Snow and a lot of the other quick effect cards that are difficult for this deck to deal with. Snow's a big one, but again, we'll talk about that later. Another good option is Pankratops, because it often is dealing with 2 cards on board. But I didn't want to make this deck 41, and I felt that the third copy of everything else was a little bit better than the one random Pankratops. But that's up to you. But that is it for the purely going second cards, like the cards that are infinitely better going second than going first. And then for the final couple cards in the deck, we have some that are good going first or second. We've got 2 copies of Fusion Destiny, which is again great going second because your opponent's either going to negate it or DPE is going to deal with 2 or 3 cards. We've got Desires to draw us into our other cards. And then of course we've got the bricks that go with Fusion Destiny. But even these, it's not too bad because these are the only engine requirements in the entire deck. And so it's not very likely that you'll draw them. And even if you do, we have so many other going second cards that you can probably still play through it. And naturally you do have the contradiction between the Desires and these cards. The Dasher and the Celestial, but just summon DPE first. Easy. Or if you can't get the DPE, that's fine. This deck doesn't need DPE to work. You still got Zeus, you still got everything else. But getting those extra cards to your hand can make a big difference. It's either going to get negated or it's almost a win con. But that is it for the main deck. Let's go ahead and move into the extra deck. And so for the extra deck, we're going to start with the Xyzes. We've got 2 copies of Daddy Zeus, Big Daddy Zeus. Just an incredible card. What more can you say? Clears boards very easily, and it's got a big body. After Zeus, we've got 2 copies of Borbo, 2 copies of Tiger Mortar, 3 copies of Shakanine. And so I chose this ratio of Zoodiac monsters because, let's see. So you're going to usually start by summoning a Zoodiac monster, let's say Thoroughblade, 16 Direct, Borbo, Tiger Mortar, Shakanine, and then you've got a 4 material Zeus. So this is one 4 material Zeus. Let's see. Same thing again. Monster, Borbo, Tiger, Shakanine Zeus, 2 4 material Zeuses, and then we have the third Shakanine for making more plays on top of that. So let's say we wanted to go like Tiger Mortar, not Tiger Mortar, Thoroughblade, Shakanine, and then Shakanine revive Tiger Mortar if we have something else in the graveyard which can get set up by like Super Poly or Thoroughblade's own effect, or there are some other cards that allow us to do this in the side deck, but 2 monsters on board. With this we could go like Vespinato, and then that's 4,000 attack right there, so that helps you end the game a little bit faster than this deck can do traditionally. Or we can link both of these away into Anaconda and then make DPE. And so that is the reason behind the ratios of the Xyz monsters. We pretty much play exactly enough to go into 2 4 material Zeuses and then 1 extra Shakanine for like the Anaconda play, which also reveals the next couple of cards in the extra deck, Anaconda and Enforcer. And if you didn't see it fast enough, it's also a Vespinato in the 3rd Shakanine. But Anaconda and Zeus are pretty much cards that allow us to put some sort of defense on the board if we can't fully break our opponent's board, or if we're not able to fully like deal with their follow-up as well. So like, let's say you're going against Phantom Knights and you break their board, but usually Phantom Knights will have an insane amount of follow-up in their graveyard, like 2 to 3 Phantom Knight names, maybe like a Fog Blade or something. Like, they'll have some follow-up, and so you have to have something as well to deal with that, or else they'll just combo again next turn. And so this solves that problem of this deck. And oftentimes you will have Zeus as well, but they might have the out for Zeus, but it's a lot more difficult for them to out Zeus plus DPE. Not to mention that Celestial will give you follow-up on your next couple of turns. And those are the main reasons why I decided to go with this over a card like F-Zero and Utopic Draco Future. They both are summoned in the same ways, and while Draco Future doesn't require the in-deck bricks, such as the Celestial and the Dasher, you're not getting that same level of follow-up that you get with DPE. So that's why I decided to go with that. But if you build this deck in Master Duel, Draco Future is good enough. It's kind of the same thing, just a little teeny bit worse. So that is it for the Xyz and Link monsters, and one of the fusion monsters. Now the final couple of cards in the extra deck are the rest of the fusion monsters, and for those we play one copy of Starving Venom, one Dracostapelia, and then one Mudragon of the Swamp. These allow us to just deal with most boards in the current format. There is a little bit of redundancy between the Dracostapelia and the Starving Venom. Usually both of these come out against the same boards. Like, this is just all dark monsters, so maybe this hits like a Dragon Link board, whereas this hits a Phantom Knight board where you can get DPE plus their Rusty, but this could also get DPE Rusty. So there's a little bit of overlap here, but they're both good in their own ways, and we'll discuss both of those in a second. Well, no, let's just discuss it now. But this is really good because it gives you some monster negation. So if you summon this against Phantom Knights, it helps you stop their follow-up a little bit more. And then Starving Venom helps you put damage on board because it's a huge body that gains more attack. And then if you can end on a board of like Starving Venom plus DPE on your opponent's turn, instead of just popping one card with DPE, you can pop your Starving Venom, and that clears their whole board of special summon monsters. So it gives you a board wipe disruption on top of that. So they're good in different scenarios, but they are similar. And now next we have Mudragon. And Mudragon, I think, is the MVP of the extra deck, barring Zeus, because it's used in so many different scenarios right now. Like, if we look at some of the common things in the format, I think a big attribute is wind. So like, take a look at some of these wind monsters right now. There's a ton of wind monsters. First of all, we've got the Griffin Rider, and almost every single deck is playing adventures right now. And so Griffin Rider is a wind wing beast. With that, we also have Baronne de Fleur. It's a wind warrior, Auroradon, wind machine, Crystal Wing, wind dragon, Shen, wind psychic, Appaloosa, wind fairy. We have all of these wind monsters that are being summoned pretty much every single game. And so it makes Mudragon very, very good right now. Like, it's so common to get like Griffin Rider Baron, or like Baron Shen against Virtual World, or Shen Crystal Wing against Virtual World. You might get Appaloosa Griffin Rider, Appaloosa Baron, or if you're playing against the like one of the mini synchro decks right now, Auroradon comes up, and they can't link it away, and so it sticks on the board. So if they have that plus like Griffin Rider or Baron, then boom, you just synchro them, or not synchro, but fusion them away. And while Auroradon isn't like something that you normally want to get rid of, it does allow you to use Super Poly to get rid of like something else that you would want to get rid of. And so that's definitely something to keep in mind. But that's just one attribute. Another common one are obviously light and dark. And so for darks, we obviously have like the Starving Venom and the Dracostapelia, but you've got like IP, Rusty, Savage Dragon and Abyss, Dragoon, if you see that, DPE. Most of these are different type dark monsters, well, except for these, or DPE Rusty, or like, these are different types at least. But I guess DPE Rusty and multiple dark dragons are why you play your Dracostapelia and your Starving Venom. But Mudragon is still good against darks. There are also other just like random dark monsters that I can't think of right now. The other attribute is light, and so you've got like Seal, Chao Fang, Beatrice, Herald, Snow. All of these are light monsters that are mostly different attributes, except for like Beatrice, Herald, which you'll never see. But all of these are light. Oh, and of course Chixiao. Chixiao's also light, and it's a different type too, except for Chao Fang. But there's so many situations where you just like Mudragon a board away. And the other thing I'll mention about Mudragon is that it's a level 4 monster, and so there are some situations to where you will get rid of some of your opponent's monsters, and let's say you discard a Zoodiac monster for the summon of it for the Super Poly. You'll summon your second Zoodiac monster, and then you'll overlay both of them for a Shakanine, and then you can like revive a monster, go into some other Zoodiac monsters, summon a second Shakanine, because it's not a hard once per turn, and then you can revive another Zoodiac monster, and then make more plays from there. So this can either be like, I don't know, the Xyz you attack with to make a Zeus, and then these could be a Anaconda DPE, so you can have Zeus Anaconda DPE. That's a pretty tough board for your opponent to crack. and then you can use DPE to get off the board when you use Zeus, so that they're never interfering with each other. And so Mud Dragon has a lot of synergy there as well, like not only just clearing boards, but also just synergizing with the deck as a special summon level 4 monster. And so that also is pretty good, to be honest. But that is it for the extra deck. Finally, we're going to move into the side deck, and because this is a going second deck, most of the side deck is devoted for going first, because when you blind second, or if you win the die roll and go second, a lot of people are going to just force you to go first, especially knowing that this is a Zoodiac deck, and people don't think that Zoodiacs can actually play going first. And so for those games, I actually side an Adventure Engine. And so for that, I've got 3 copies of Water Enchantress, 3 copies of Right, 1 Fateful Adventure, and then 1 Griffin Rider. So we can side these in going first because we don't use normal summon monster effects really, except for Thoroughblade or Rat, and those aren't even like major effects that we need to use to be able to function. Like we'll be fine foregoing a Rat effect. So these have actually pretty good synergy. Now another thing that I like is that the Fateful Adventure actually discards as well, and so it gives you similar plays as the Super Poly. When you discard a Zoo monster, you can revive it with Shakanine, and that can help you set up your DPE or some other play that you might want to be doing. And so these are great for siding and going first. Once again, it doesn't hurt Zoodiacs, and there's that synergy with multiple Zoodiacs. And now for also going first, we have 1 copy of Artifact Scythe, 2 copies of Sanctum, and then 1 Trap Trick. And I like these cards because, again, they're very strong going first. And I like this ratio because when we use Trap Trick will banish 1 Sanctum, set the other Sanctum, and that means, and Sanctum will summon Scythe, so that means the 1 Trap Trick gets the entire engine out of the deck. That way we don't dead draw on it later. I like that a lot more than playing the 3 copies of Sanctum, to where you resolve the 1, and then you still have the 2 other bricks in your deck. And sure, Trap Trick's just 1 card, but it's still a nice interaction to have within the deck. And now the key to siding with this deck is that, if you'll notice, we have 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, 12 cards going first. This is great because when we choose to go first, we can just side out all of those going second cards. I wanted to be sure when building this deck that I had the exact number of going first cards as things that could be sided out. And so you could side out evenly Droplets, which isn't that good going first. It's not bad, but it's not good either. Mystic Mine can come out, and then Cosmic Cyclones can come out. So you can side like straight up these out, so you're not left with like subpar cards in your deck. Now the only card that is left over that's good going second is Super Poly, but that's because Super Poly is just really good disruption. Clear 2 monsters off of their board and they can't respond to it. Now depending on the matchup, you might want to take these out and maybe keep in like a Droplets or a Cyclone, or something else. It's very matchup dependent, but the nice thing is that we can side out like 4 playsets of something in order to side in these 12 cards going first. So that's really neat. And then the final cards that we play in the side deck, because again this is just 12, we side 2 copies of DD Crow and then 1 copy of Called by the Grave. All of these are for the same reason pretty much. I mean, these can be good in certain matchups, but the main reason I side these cards is for handling a single card that's very common in the metagame right now. A card that has been hurting this deck a lot, and that is Fairy Tale Snow. Fairy Tale Snow is very difficult for this deck to deal with because it's often in the graveyard by the time that we're actually able to play. Like, decks are sending it on turn 1 with Beatrice and Shooting Riser Dragon, and so we can't deal with it with any of these cards except maybe Droplets when it hits the board, but at that point we maybe need to Droplet something else. And so because Snow is so difficult for this deck to deal with, like they just flip our normal summon face down and we can't make Zeus or anything, I felt the need to, against those decks, like if you're playing Virtual World or you're playing against like a synchro spam deck that's dumping this to the grave, side some of these in and then going second. I mean, these can maybe help you disrupt their play, but any of these, even as your 6th card or drawn off of a Desires, can help you deal with that Snow, and that can sometimes be a lot more impactful than maybe a Cosmic Cyclone in that matchup, or in those matchups. And so that's it for the extra deck. Alright, so finally, I just want to show you guys a couple of test hands to again show you how consistent this deck is and what you can do with it when you're going second. I'm going to show you some hands with the main deck and also some sided hands going first, so you can see that adventure engine in action, because again, that is very spicy, I would say. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first test hand. So again, going second. Ooh, did I shuffle well? But either way, these are our first 5 cards. Against any matchup, right now at least, Droll is going to be big, stopping them from making like their full board, so they're not going to have like infinite negates like some decks tend to seem to have, and we've got multiple cards to deal with their board. And also note that evenly matched can be used multiple times. There's no once per turn on this card, and so you can go into the battle phase, evenly match, negate, evenly match them again. So that's an option. You do want to be wary of playing Tinky first, because that's another card that your opponent won't have to banish, so be careful with that. But again, going second, our 6th card would be like a whip. Well, it is the Whiptail. And so let's say we drolled our opponent, right? And then they're not really able to do much. And then we could maybe mine to bait something, or maybe we want to keep the mine up. But maybe we evenly, and then mine. And now the opponent has to deal with mine. What we do main phase 2 is we go like Tinky, Thoroughblade. Now the opponent's under mine, and we've got some follow-up for turn 2. Like, we don't even have to play right now, because they're like under mine. They're not going to draw the out. There's nothing they have that can out it. So then on our next turn, Droplets, Thoroughblade, discard the Whiptail, draw Celestial, and now from here they're still under mine. Not much they can do here, but we can go Shaka-9, Tiger Mortar, Tiger Mortar effect, attach the Whiptail, Borbo. This puts them on a 4-turn clock. Like, they've got to draw an out to mine in like 4 turns or else it's game. And if they used, let's say, Anaconda on their turn, 3 turns, 3 direct attacks at 2800, that would be game. And the opponent would have to find a way to deal with that. The other cool thing about having this Droplets is, if let's say they can reduce their monsters to 1, we can just Droplets, clear this off the board, reduce our monsters to 0, they're back on their mine. And so this deck is able to play on their mine very, very well. But let's go ahead and look at another hand. So let's take a look at this second test hand. We've got Lancia, Cyclone, Ram, Fusion Destiny, and Droll. So in this case, we've got 2 lingering effect hand traps, 2 floodgate hand traps pretty much. It's going to be difficult for any deck to put up a significant board against this. And then for our 6th card, we've got Desires. And so let's say we even use both of these. You likely only need one, but let's say we use both, right? Then our opponent sets some back row. We could Cyclone that too. We could activate our Pot of Desires, or maybe you don't use Desires because you might banish Fusion Destiny. Maybe this is enough to stop them from making a good enough board, and then you can just maybe activate Fusion Destiny first. Maybe they negate it, maybe they don't. If they don't negate, like let's say they've got like, hard to think of let's say they have a Baron to floor up. You could use this to bait it, and then summon out your last Zoodiac monster, and then go Borbo, attack direct, Zeus, and then activate your Desires afterwards in main phase 2, and then go from there. Or if let's say they just negate it and you want to go for something else afterwards, you could activate the Desires after the Fusion Destiny, and you would get like a, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 banished, and then you would draw more Zoodiac monsters. Let's see what we banished. Dasher. So again, you got to be careful when you have Fusion Destiny Desires, but for the most part, that's fine. But again, because of those very powerful hand traps we had, plus the rest of the hand, it would have been very easy to break the board, make a Zeus, and then be good from there. Or even if like we bait them with Zeus, we could have DPE's follow up. So many options with this deck. Let's look at one more going second hand. Alright, so for this final hand, we've got Fusion Destiny, Whiptail, Super Poly, Droplets, and a second Droplets. And so we've got no hand traps this time, but we have like the best going second cards. And then the 6th card would be a Mystic Mine. So again, like, this would be easy breaking boards. Mystic Mine can be a win con. And it doesn't even matter what's on the opponent's side of the field, to be honest. Like, they could have double Scythe lock up. But what you can just do is Super Poly away their Rusty and their DPE. That deals with the Scythe lock by itself. Discard the droplets. And then you've got a second droplets for anything else. You got Mine, Fusion Destiny. This could be a DPE Zeus board. Like, this is like an insane hand. So let's go ahead and look at what this deck can do going first post side when you've got the adventure stuff in. So again, for the sake of example, we're siding out these 12 cards. Droplets, 3 Mine, 3 Cyclone, 3 Evenly. And then we're going to be siding in Fateful, Called By, or, well, not the Called By and Crows, but Fateful, Enchantress, Trap Trick, Scythe cards, and the other adventure cards. So let's go ahead and look at that. Alright, so we've got everything sided in, power shuffled. Just doing a couple more shuffles just to randomize a little bit more, and so you guys don't think I'm like stacking my deck or anything. Alright, so let's look at this first hand. We've got Whiptail, Trap Trick, Shifter, Desires, and Thoroughblade. So this is a pretty solid hand, but there are a few contradictions, especially being the Shifter, because you can't use Shifter once you have cards in graveyard, and so it is very powerful, but we also could go into DPE with this hand because we have Thoroughblade plus another monster. And so you have to kind of weigh out what might be better. And so considering that a lot of decks are playing hand traps right now, you might not want to go for the DPE play, especially if that's all you have. But at the same time, we do have Trap Trick, so we have access to Scythe. And so what we could honestly do as just a safe play is we could activate Shifter, set the Trap Trick, and pass. Because also under Shifter, your opponent can't use Ash Blossom, which means if you use Trap Trick, get Sanctum, there's nothing that they could, like, they can't negate the Sanctum with Ash. It would have to be maybe like an Imperm on the Scythe, but if you wait until they have a monster, they can't even do that. Plus, they're still under Shifter. And so I think that would be the play here. And then you don't activate the Desires because you could banish your Scythe or your Sanctums. And so on the opponent's turn, you Trap Trick. Like, they're going to be under Shifter Scythe. They're not doing anything. So you'd banish a Sanctum, set a Sanctum, get Scythe, yada yada. Scythe gets summoned. And then these go to grave. On your next turn, let's see what you would draw. Super Poly. So again, not a terrible card to draw, which is why we keep it in. It can be used offensively or defensively. But I think what would be ideal here is now that your opponent isn't under Shifter and they're not under the Sanctum anymore, you start pushing. And so you could go like Thoroughblade, discard Whiptail, draw. Oh, this is pretty good. Like, again, now we have more defense on the opponent's turn. And then from here you can Tiger Mortar. You could Shaka-9. You could Shaka-9 this back if you want. That'd probably be best, depending on what's on your opponent's board. Or you could just attach it and then have more damage up. Either way. Or you could go for like all of that actually, but it just depends on the board because you want to attack directly with the Borbo too, if possible. If you don't need to attack directly because your opponent maybe didn't put up a significant board, then you could make this play and like Tiger Mortar, attach this so it gets big, and then Shaka-9 back the Borbo, and then you can, or either of them I guess, running out of space here, but you have these to push with damage. And then main phase 2, you could go Zeus, link both of these into Anaconda, dump your bricks, DPE. So let's just get them out of the deck. Fusion Destiny, and then Dasher, shuffle, shuffle, and you still have the Super Poly plus the Lanceo on top of that, but you could also use your Desires here. And then Desires will banish 10. And then you'll draw Shifter, which is dead, but Temple, which will be good next turn if you didn't banish your other adventure stuff. Hopefully you didn't. Well, you banished Fateful, but that's fine. Right will at least get you a monster. And so, like, this was a pretty decent showing. But let's go ahead and look at another example hand that was just one, and again the Sanctum package kind of saved us. Alright, so looking at a second going first test hand, let's see what we get with this. So we've got Wright, Lancia, Ramram, Droll, and Scythe. So sucks to draw the Scythe, but at least we have some plays we can make with it. And so what you can do with this hand actually is first, of course, start with your Wright, and then let's see. So Wright will get us our token. It will also get us to Fateful Adventure. And then we're gonna, let's see, so Wright goes to the grave, it resolves. Use Fateful Adventure to search for our Griffin Rider. Top of the deck. So now from here, we can just discard anything in our hand, and it's going to depend on the matchup. Again, this will be a game 2, so you'll know what's going to be better between the Droll and the Lancia, but one of those could be discarded. You could even discard the Ramram if you want, but I think Ramram will be a great follow-up on next turn because that's going to get you to Zeus. And you could discard the Scythe, but I think there's something else that we could do instead, because ending on just Griffin Rider plus these hand traps is safe, but it might not be enough. And again, you're going to know because this is a game 2 or 3, so you've seen the matchup. But what you could do, for example, is let's say discard the Droll, right? So then what you could do is special summon Griffin, normal summon the Ramram, or I guess a better example would be discard the Lancia, and then normal summon the Droll, right? And then go into Anaconda, DPE. You can set the Scythe, and then Scythe lock your opponent next turn, and then like draw into, you know, whatever, and then shuffle, but have more things to push with next turn, make a Zeus, and you've got DPE Zeus, which is again a very tough thing for a lot of decks to deal with. So let's look at another test hand. So it's like even going first, the Adventure Engine gave us a play because it made it very, very easy to get into a DPE instead of, and we happen to draw the Scythe. Even if we couldn't go DPE and we just had Griffin, it'd be better than what the Zoodiac Engine does by itself, which is nothing right now. So let's look at one more hand. Almost dropped the card. So we've got Shifter, Enchantress, Adventure, right, and then Fusion Destiny. So wow, no Zoodiac monsters, but this does get us to Griffin DPE. Like, this isn't horror. I mean, it's not good, but it's not horrible either. So what we could do is Shifter Fusion Destiny is a little iffy, but it's fine because you can still activate everything. Your cards will just get banished instead. Something to consider though is maybe you want to get them in the graveyard so that you can use Celestial at some point. But I guess you never will because Shifter can't be used with monsters engraved. So I guess, yeah, you have to use Shifter. And then you go with Wright. That's going to get your token. Search your Griffin Rider, because you've already got Fateful. Search your Griffin Rider. I'm just going to move the fusion materials as well, but search and summon Griffin Rider. Then you can activate your fusion, and just discard Temple, which will get banished. Sucks that you're losing your whole hand for this play, but it is a play. Activate your Fusion Destiny, DPE, Dasher and Celestial get banished, and then you've got this board at least. So it's, again, it's a board. It beats what this deck could normally do, which was the whole purpose of siding in these cards. I wanted to make sure that I could at least play going first, and then on your next turn, I don't remember if I shuffled, but on your next turn, oh well, that sucks. But you could have drawn this, and this would let you get back into your regular Zoodiac plays. And so I'm a big fan of this siding strategy. And again, if we didn't have D-Shifter, we would have cleared out most of our hand, and then next turn Celestial would have drawn us 2 more cards, which again would be nuts. Like, so even if the first card is maybe like not the best, the next 2 might be, and all you need is 1 card to make a Zeus, or 1 card to crack a board if your opponent builds one, if that 1 card's like Super Poly or Evenly. And so there's so many ways that this deck can play, even going first, once you side appropriately. But alright guys, that is it for this Pure Zoodiac deck profile. If you'd like to see some other interesting decks to play in this current format, I think this format is wide open, and any of these decks will be viable. Click this video right here on the screen, and that's going to show you a couple of really good options to play that aren't quite the standard decks that you would see everywhere else. These are some different choices, but give them a shot. I think you'll enjoy it. If you want to see some more deck profiles, click the other video on the screen. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.